Welcome to the Mikey Peres podcast.
Denise Drinkwalter, it is so good to have you on the show. This is the 6th episode of the Mikey Peres podcast. It has been over 1 year since I've recorded another episode, so I am more than excited to have you on the show, and I'm more than excited to revive this show. It's been so long. Denise, let me give you an introduction here for all those who don't know. Denise is a mom of 3 adult children. She's been married for 34 years to her high school sweetheart. She just told me out there since she was 16 years old. She met him. She's retired as an elementary school principal in 2018 after 31 years of service. She's an entrepreneur. She's an empowerment life coach for Denise Drinkwalter Coaching for Women in Midlife Years. And she's a parenting coach in Clutter Boss Academy. That is a mouthful. Denise, thank you so much for coming on the show.
What a privilege and honor to be here. And I am so tickled pink. Love the shirt, right? I'm wearing a pink shirt that I have been the first one to come on after a year hiatus. So that makes me feel really special. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. Okay, let's jump straight to it. So you have a very unique line of work. It's not a common title people have. Tell us about it and expand on the kind of unique insights it's given you in terms of helping people throughout certain points in their life, and particularly the kind of mechanics that would help an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I see a lot of parallel. What happens is people that reach out to work with me hit a bump in the road. Their children are grown up, moving away from home, and all of a sudden they realize, okay, now what do I do? Because they've done something for their whole life, in this case, mother, right? And they have no idea who they are, what they should do, or what their next steps are going to be. And so they're lost. They're lost in this sea of emotions that overcome them, and they feel isolated. They feel like they don't have worth. They don't know what to do with their time. They've spent so many years investing themselves in everybody else that they don't even know who they are anymore. So there's something inside of them that is wanting to do something, but they have no idea where to start. I want to know who I am, but what do I do? How do I find that?
Right.
So I find a big parallel in that with entrepreneurs who are like, I'm done with the 9 to 5. I've been doing it for blah, 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 this amount of time, but I don't know where to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know how do I do this, right? So I think there's a big parallel in that, because then fear starts to step in, and like all the doubt and, I don't think I can do that. I'm just going to go back to 9 to 5. I don't want that.
Right. It's almost like they work 9 to 5 and they constantly hear what it's like to be an entrepreneur and all these lessons and videos, but there's no platform to absorb it. It's not necessarily about being an entrepreneur. It's about learning how to make that transition. Because in theory, or like every engineer likes to work on a system in isolation with no other preconditions or existing context. But the truth is, you have a life. Most of us are paycheck to paycheck. You can't just go ahead and start being an entrepreneur when it takes 3 or 4 years till you see any ROI. So I think there's a strong parallel there where you've been doing something for so long. It's not even about being exposed to information. It's about learning how to actually do something with that information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what does that look like, sound like, feel like to even begin that process, right? I know a lot of people, look at social media. I'm going to look at outside. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at that. There's strategies, techniques available, like you say, everywhere. But how do we take what we've been doing for so long and then all of a sudden make a change, but still have the passion in our heart to do something that is really valuable for what we want to do, right? Uncover that piece.
Right. So, in a typical case, how would you approach someone getting started with a whole entirely new life or adjusting to a whole new mentality?
So for whatever reason, I do an incredible job at asking key questions that start to tap a different point of view, a different understanding, a different way of even realizing there's something more here. Let's explore that. So through the use of open-ended questions that are very specific, there's a whole strategy behind it. And so what I do when I ask the questions, people say to me, "Ooh, these are hard questions." And I'm like, they're hard only because you've never been asked it that way before, right?
Right.
So they are questions that go deep, and I don't waste time on the surface. I don't waste time on the surface at all. We dig right in, right quick, real deep. And so they really have to contemplate, ooh, I don't know the answer to that, but this is what I'm feeling. And as we talk, I listen to what I hear, and then I can pull pieces together and go, okay, so here's some more work we want to do. We want to look at this piece. Here's one thing I want you to go out and explore. Here's some questions I want you to think about. Everybody's different. There's never a map that's exactly the same. My questions are the same, but the results are so individualized because the people that I speak to are their own people. Yes, they've had similar experiences. The answers are always different, always different.
Very, very cool. I thought maybe they'd be like some underlying pattern that you pick up, and
I could say the one big ball is they know there's something more, but that's about it. Right.
Right. It's almost like you're talking to their subconscious. And that's it for like many things. We understand we're a lot more perceptive than we might consciously realize. And in fact, it's the thing we build barriers around are in fact those things we want to explore. And and we were just talking about this before the year. Sometimes you do have to go down into a dark place, take 4 or 5 steps back. So you're in a position that you can actually route yourself 20 steps forward. Yeah. In the entrepreneur world, I would say that that's definitely an issue. And it's a little more dynamic, in the entrepreneur world, because the problems you have today are not necessarily the problems you have today were not necessarily the problems you've had yesterday. In fact, you're very much able to work with the sort of issues. But anytime you reach any element of growth and acceleration, you realize that these tiny issues that aren't issues become sort of like exponentially more compounded. And it is just, and what you have to never get is too comfortable with the lighting. You can never get, it is what it is. You can never get too comfortable with the sort of ecosystem you've built yourself in. You have to be okay. I call it like a digital pyromania. It's human nature to you have this internal infrastructure where you pass information along, you get work done, and it works for 5 clients, for example. And then you start throwing 10 clients at it, and you realize it can't hold it. It's collapsing on its own weight. And you can feel this urge to, hey, listen, we can optimize here. These are the weakest components. The real thing you need to do is take 4 or 5 steps back, burn it down, and come up with an entirely new system. A little bit of a tangent here, but what I have learned is that it's very interesting how you think things aren't issues and then they become issues, and it's this constant cycle of discovery. But I think for you, it's more like just getting people out of this hole that they've dug themselves in for so long.
And a belief system that's the way it should be. That's the only way there is. When in actual fact, it's like, well, that's one way. But have you tapped this? Have you tapped that? But they don't know what they don't know. Right. So when they start to explore, like you talk about those dark places, and get out of the fear of that idea, that's when movement happens. And it can happen so fast, right? Mm-hmm. Things can grow so quickly. But like you say, I believe life is all about learning. And so if you are put on this earth, you are put on this earth to learn. And that never stops. I don't care how old you are. And so if you are not taking that concept of every day, I get to learn something, then you are going to be stagnant. You are going to slow down. Things are not going to go the way you want them to because you're not expanding yourself in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's the same in the entrepreneur world. When you start to stay the same and not change, you won't grow.
Right. Complacency is the death of you, 100%.
Right.
How long do people normally come to you to kind of, from I know that the process is never ending, but to the point where they're able to stand on their own feet and pursue their own path?
It's very interesting. I can do it in 1 hour. It's if they're available and they're ready.
Really?
And that's what, yep, I can do it in 1 hour. I'm making myself sound amazing. I don't know. I am.
I want to hear it. I'm trying to get this camera to stop.
Well, you're amazing. The light's coming through.
I'm like an angel.
You are.
We might turn off the video for this one, but yeah. So, and what would you say to entrepreneurs who are just very new to the world, who've got to make the transition? What advice would you give them?
So, learning, there's no doubt, but I don't mean just learning to do the thing. It's learning about yourself and know what works and doesn't work. And why isn't it working? You need to figure out the why behind it, right? So you need to go big. You need to find out, you need to look to see who's doing what you think you want to do and work with them, get connected with them somehow, listen, do.
Right.
But then don't mimic. That's not going to get you anywhere. You have to know what your root, you can never lose your passion. Why are you doing this? Don't lose your focus.
Find the people who inspire you, recognize their patterns, don't mimic them, but leverage their patterns and through your own lens in your own way.
Absolutely.
Yes. Fair
Absolutely.
enough. Very cool.
Absolutely.
And, what were some challenges you faced in your career, as an entrepreneur? Did you have, looking back, would you say that you've had any serious hurdles, and maybe give us some insight on how you overcame them?
Absolutely. Serious hurdles was I was in my own way and I didn't even know it. So I was doing, well, she's doing that and she's successful. He's doing that. He's successful. Well, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm just going to try and do what they do. And I lost my way. I had no idea. I was just trying to, I was flavor of the month. It was ridiculous.
Right.
And yet I thought I knew what I wanted, but I really didn't know. And even today, I'm like you. You know what? There's more I've got to do. You know what? I'm pulling the team together this week and we're having more discussion about, okay, so we've got more that we need to do to support more women. How are we going to do this? Because the one-on-one is fabulous. I love it. I have a course as well, and that works really well, but I'm not hitting the numbers I need to hit to help women in this middle age. Not the perimenopause, like the physical stuff, but the whole, who am I? What's next for me? So those are pieces that like I say, learn. I'm learning.
The quest and pursuit for knowledge never ends.
Yeah.
It never does.
Exactly.
Very good.
And understand how much knowledge, you tapped this already, but how much knowledge you actually have, you don't even recognize it. Right?
Right. We have these untapped reserves of persistence, grit, and intelligence. And I think it is important to, it's just they're there, but you need to adapt the right mindset, actually capitalize on them. And that is a never-ending process. It truly is. Yeah,
absolutely. Isn't that the beautiful thing of life, right?
Agreed. So Denise, so I guess we're wrapping up here. This has been great. And so piece for your advice for entrepreneurs is look at who inspires you, understand what makes them successful, and leverage that in your own unique way.
100%. And that own unique way is key.
Very good. Denise, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Take care.